Alright, you lot, welcome back. Now, as you can probably hear, I'm not doing great. There's no camera today because I look like a corpse. Specifically, one of those bloated ones that looks like it's about to explode. You know, the ones that they find in the ocean, and then it all goes horribly wrong when they try to move them. Yeah, this is why this video is a day late, because I couldn't even talk yesterday, so this is actually a vast improvement, even though it doesn't sound like it. But here's the thing, we've got new Mutilators. Brand new lads, and... you know what? They're fine. I wanted to like these more. I'm not going to lie. I was really hoping when we saw the teasers and it was like, oh, there's probably some Mutilator action on the way. I was really hoping that they'd make them a bit more weird. Now, if you're of a certain age, you will remember these Mutilators. Now, I'm not advocating for the return of these because, in my humble opinion, they're just terrible. Like, they're not good. The way that they did some of this stuff is baffling. I still don't understand the choices where they put the blades coming out of the shoulder pads, and they sort of made it look like they were growing out of the metal, but not really. It just sort of looks like they were stuck on top, even though they're supposed to look like they're coming from below. And the faces. Oh, the faces. That was an ambitious choice back in the day to try and pull that off, and I would argue that in many ways, if they were going for this dude's got a weird stretched face, then congratulations, you nailed it. If you're going for this dude's got a believable weird stretched face, I'm afraid not quite. Didn't quite manage that. For me, the design ethos, how pretentious was that? The idea clearly seemed to be there's this odd explosion, this weird growth of horrific blades and flesh, and it's overcoming the armour, and it's just making them... It's just taking them and twisting them and turning them into something really, really weird and horrific. And I can see that that's what they were going for. The execution of it, I would argue, was somewhat lackluster and perhaps too ambitious at the time, because there's some baffling choices going on with these. And so, when I say that these aren't quite doing it for me, I'm not suggesting we go back to this, right? I'm not suggesting we go back to these, but I actually would have liked to see a bit more of these in the new ones, because if anything, these for me go the opposite way in that they're too clean. For my money, these aren't weird enough. Now, they don't have to be an explosion of flesh and blades, although that would frankly be rad if executed correctly, but there's something too controlled about the way these look. And the impression that I always got, and admittedly I haven't read up on Mutilator lore for quite some time, right? But back in the day when these were a thing that I had, I don't even know where they are now, I think I only had one. But the impression these models gave has lasted. It's lasted for me, and it's made Mutilators feel like something that was just an explosion of awful, mutilated, close combat chaos. I don't get that vibe from these. I don't quite get that. Instead, this feels purposeful, and it feels like designed. Now, not necessarily designed by someone sane. I'm not suggesting that whoever came up with the idea for Mutilators, should their background have changed, you know, they really wanted them to have a slightly weird face with a mouth that's all mangled with a grill in it, or anything like that. But we've lost some of that random factor that we had with the old ones. And again, I can't stress this enough. I'm not suggesting the old ones were good, but there was an element to them that I did really enjoy, which was just how chaotic and all over the place they felt. And I don't get that same vibe from these. In a way, the Obliterators have the same issue, but for some reason it feels a little more glaring with these, because there are elements on a couple where it looks like they wanted to do that, but then for some reason didn't. So when you look at the actual weapons, you've got a sort of chainsword-esque digit there on one of the three claws. And you've also got the spike growth. Now, two of them are borderline symmetrical, which is fine, but not as visually interesting as if it was on one side only. But the other hand is just this horrible growth with a big bunch of spikes sticking out of it. This one looks very designed apart from just the face, which has that element of chaotic eruption, if you like. And this one, the asymmetric horns and growths coming out look like there's supposed to be some element of randomness to it. And the way that the weapons have been done reinforces that, but not quite enough. And as you're having scrolled down, what I remember is still the case. So the hulking monstrosities known as Mutilators are born when a mind obsessed with slaughter and butchery falls victim to one of the many technoviruses that gestate within the warp. At first their symptoms are subtle, manifesting as a compulsion to constantly clean and sharpen weapons or refuse to be parted with their favourite blade, but soon flesh and armour begin to knit into one impossible whole as the host's mind decays and their body swells. And again, right, transformation into a flesh metal abomination is not without its perks. I mean, yeah, that's kind of a flesh metal abomination, kind of. It's not anywhere near as much abomination as it is flesh or metal, but it's sort of that. The fact is that whilst those old Mutilators are janky as hell, no one can argue that they don't look like flesh metal abominations. They really do. I mean, they look like abominations from top to tail, but specifically, flesh metal abominations, that's what that looks like. I'm not convinced that it's what that looks like, because this doesn't feel like the outcome of a virus. It doesn't feel like the outcome of something chaotic and born of mutation. It feels like something that's been designed. Now, to be fair, I will say, the design of the armour looks fantastic. I really like that. They are massively girthy. That always goes a long way. A good amount of girth on a lad, and you can overlook a multitude of sins, right? The weapons, I actually like the way they've done some of the weapons. I just wish there was more gross fleshy stuff on them, or that they were a bit more weird. For instance, the left hand on this guy, that is the kind of random nonsense that I would like to see more of. Does it look barely functional? Yes. Does it look like the result of a chaotic mutation? Also yes, more so than the other arm. Now that's obviously not to say that these don't have a purpose. They do. They want to slaughter and butcher stuff. But at the same time, I feel like they're underplaying a significant part of what makes Mutilators and Obliterators cool. This is, I think, one of the few occasions where a miniature can get away with being overdone, where it can get away with being quite busy, with a few too many details. But they haven't gone that direction. I will say, his armour, really like his armour. That might be my favourite of the lot. The horns, I would actually just snip one of those off, or like file it down so it wasn't there, just to add to the asymmetry of it. But overall, it's a decent looking lad, it's just not weird enough. And I think really that sums up my main problem with them. They're fine, they're perfectly serviceable, but they're just not weird enough. There isn't enough of what makes them them on them, if that makes sense. The overall impact is lacking, and it feels a little bit lackluster purely because there's not enough of the flesh metal and the virus bits of the guys who have become flesh metal abominations because of a virus. Much like Red Tide, the Carcharodon's book, which we recently did a book club for on Adeptus Ridiculous, it would have been way better if there was more Carcharodons. These, exactly the same. These would be great Mutilators if they had more Mutilator in them. Really though, I can't hammer this home enough. I don't want these back. I don't want them back. Alright? I really don't. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let me know what you think of those lads and these lads in the comments down below. Maybe you have a soft spot for these fellas. I certainly don't. I hated them and I hated putting it together. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. There might be a video tomorrow, but honestly, this might have wiped me out for the rest of the week. We'll see how it goes. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.